The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Israel Monsanto, Hillsborough County Development Services. Welcome to the Land Development Code Text Amendment Public Outreach Meeting. This meeting will consist of the presentation of the 9 Land Development Code Amendment text changes that the county is contemplating in the current process, round 1. And with me, we have county staff. I don't know if you can see it on your screens. To those who are connected through their computers, we have Tom Hisney, Development Services, and we also have on the screen Sheila Tirado, also from Development Services. We also have other staff that will now present themselves.
Brian Grady, Hillsborough County.
And we also have other staff from our technical support who will also assist in the case that we need their help. So with that being said, the first thing that we will do is right now for the attendees, you are going to be panelists. So you will be able to unmute yourself, and also you will be able to use your webcams if you wish to do so, and also if you have the capability of using a webcam. So Mr. Grievance is going to update your status from an attendee to a panelist. You will see, if, again, for those who are using their computers, that your screen may change, so you can have the ability to activate your mic and also your webcam. For those who have the agenda, the meeting will be conducted as follows. We will have the each of the text amendments presented one by one. I will go through a PowerPoint presentation for each Land Development Code amendment, and after I briefly present the changes proposed, we will have the question and answer session for those who wish to speak for that particular text amendment. Once we finish that Q&A session for a text amendment, we will then move on to the next text change. And I see that we have Christina Bosworth, we have Gordon Schiff, we have Herbert Belcher, and I think I saw also David Mechanic. He's still in the attendee list, but we have about 4 people here, which is good. Thank you for joining us.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Somehow or the other, my thing is only on auto for the thing. Could you post your PowerPoints?
Yes, we're going to start doing now in a few minutes. So what we're going to do is.
Can you post the PowerPoints on underneath the LDC amendments so the public can see them later on? Because apparently my computer is messed up. I can't see the PowerPoint.
Okay, I will start it now, and then you let me know if you can see it. And also for all of those of you who are also using a computer, let me know if you see it. So I will present the PowerPoint now.
Sure.
All right, do you see the presentation?
Yes, now I can, thank you.
Perfect. So what we're going to do is while I present the text amendments, you may mute yourself. And then once we go over each text amendment, you can unmute and let us know about your question. So we can go ahead now and everybody can mute their mic and I will start. This is the public outreach meeting for the Land Development Code text amendment. The first public hearing will be on Thursday, July 23rd at the Board of County Commissioners. That first public hearing will be at 6 p.m. It will be a virtual meeting as well. The second public hearing will be on Thursday, September 24th, and that is the second hearing and the last one, which will be then where the final voting and adoption will happen for those text amendments that will be on that agenda. In your screen, you have the list of the current text amendments for this round. We have a total of 9 text amendments at this moment. We will do a change of the order for the text amendments. We will start with the backyard chickens, which is the second from last in the list. We're going to move it up. We have staff here who are joining us, and they will be only for that particular text. So we're bringing that up so they can be of our help in the beginning of this agenda. So Land Development Code 0855, the purpose of this text amendment is to allow backyard chickens on residentially zoned lots. Today, chickens are only allowed in agricultural zoning districts. This will permit the keeping of chickens on residentially zoned lots, developed with single family and 2-family homes only. A maximum of 5 hens will be allowed. Roosters will be prohibited. Chickens must be kept in enclosed coops at all times in the rear yard. There are also restrictions on height and size of the coop. The on-site slaughtering and egg sales will be prohibited, and variances will not be permitted to change these regulations. Is there anybody here who has a question or wish to speak about this Land Development Code amendment? If you want to speak, you can unmute yourself and you can ask a question.
Yes,
Oh, yeah. So we have Mr. Herbert, right?
yes.
Belcher. Okay. You don't have to activate your webcam, but you can go ahead and ask your questions.
Thank you. Yes, we live in a deed restricted community. And will this take all of our deed restrictions away and allow the county to impose this on all of our deeds?
Is that your question?
Yes.
I believe that all these restrictions will be in place, and that's a private matter. So I don't see how this would change that situation for each of those HOAs who that has any of those restrictions imposed today.
Are you saying here and now that the deed restrictions take precedent over this LDC?
This is Brian Grady with Hillsborough County. Deed restrictions, the county doesn't regulate deed restrictions, so we have no regulatory authority over deed restrictions. So deed restrictions are a private matter between the property owners. So if a deed restriction between the property owners restricts people from having chickens, this would have no effect on those deed restrictions, because again, this just deals with general county regulations and ordinances, and we don't enforce or address private deed restrictions.
And this is Joe Gross with Code Enforcement, and I concur with what Brian just described.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Anybody else who wishes to ask a question or comment on the backyard chickens? All right, I see none. We will move on to the next text amendment. The next text amendment is the accessory dwelling. The purpose of this text change is to revise and modify accessory dwelling provision of the Land Development Code. This text will regulate by minimum lot size, 7,000 square feet, allow accessory dwellings on legal non-conforming lots, and the accessory dwellings will be permitted on front yard placed at twice the depth of the district's front yard setback. There are also variances will not be permitted to vary these new regulations. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this text amendment? Seeing none.
Yes. Oh, yes, please.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I couldn't get unmuted fast enough.
okay, that's fine.
Okay. I see that that this means that does this mean that that any planned development can now go in and have a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet and produce massive amounts of homes in a certain area that had heretofore been like 1 unit per acre, for instance? Is that what is planned on being happening, or what's going on?
Well, that part of the accessory dwelling is not being changed, and that will today. That's not. It won't affect how it is today. If you are a planned development that doesn't explicitly allow it, it will continue that way. We are not changing that part of the code. And just so you know, if you have an accessory dwelling on a residential single lot, that doesn't affect the density. The code allows for an accessory dwelling as long as it meets the current regulation to be on the same lot. It won't affect the density.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is then this is like a mother-in-law suite, I assume, is what this is about. And so they're gonna allow people to build in a planned development mother-in-law suites on 3rd-acre lots as a help in order to sell those properties. Is that affirmative?
When you say to sell those property, I don't understand the question exactly.
Okay. Well, of course, the issue is if you have a house and you're a developer and you want to attach a mother-in-law suite to every house that you have, and you have 3rd-acre lots, and so you can put on a mother-in-law suite on any of those 3rd-acre lots, and don't worry about it. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, when you say planned development, you're talking about not a standard zoning district. Is that correct? Because again, if it is a standard zoning district, 3rd-acre lot, as long as there are a minimum lot size of 7,000, you can build the principal home and the accessory dwelling can go there anytime, as long again as it meets the standards. Again, planned developments, we're not changing the regulation of planned developments. If you are a planned development that doesn't allow accessory dwellings, this text amendment is not going to change that. It won't affect planned developments as they are today.
I understand what you're saying, that it currently does not allow. But
Right.
if they go in and planned development changes their wording in order to do this, then they can use this LDC code as a preliminary way to get their foot in the door in order to access and get more room for the housing.
Well, the other thing to keep in, the other thing to keep in mind is that in order to have an accessory dwelling, you have to reside, you have to own that parcel, that property. So just by a developer building a principal house with all these accessory dwellings attached to it, that won't meet code. You have to live in the house, you have to reside there, you have to own the house. Then you will qualify under the current code, and that's not changing with these proposed changes to have an accessory dwelling. So that is a change that the property owner will have to go through, not a developer coming in and building a new subdivision.
And again, this is Brian Grady again. And remember, these regulations are in existence now, so these allowances for accessory dwelling exist now. These changes are some adjustments to them. So again, as Israel said, the plan development regulations governing accessory dwellings and plan developments are not changing with this, and that if the PD doesn't allow them, they'd have to go through a public hearing process, which is the standard now. So really nothing's changing with that. And, so.
But the second item down there says allow accessory dwellings on legal non-conforming lots.
Correct, but again, if it's a planned development that's been subdivided in accordance with the county, those would be legal conforming lots. What that's addressing is that we have a minimum lot size requirement. So in the past, if you had an 1.5 acre property, but say you had zoning that required it to be 2 acres, but you had an 1.5 acre size lot, you'd have to go get a variance in order to do accessory dwelling because it was technically a legally non-conforming lot, but it was well over the minimum lot size allowed for accessory dwellings in the code, which is 7,000, which has always been the minimum lot size requirement. So this change basically just says why, if they've got such a large lot and other similar size lots throughout the county can have accessory dwellings, why make them go through a variance process? So that's the intent of that, is for, a standard zoning district to avoid them having to go through the variance process.
So this is not going to subdivide those 1 acre or 1.5 acre lots. Is that correct?
No, correct. This has to be on, accessory dwelling has to be on the lot, owner occupied lot, and it doesn't allow for subdivision of it. No, it's just like you said, a grandmother's suite.
Yeah, it cannot be, they can't go back in later and say, listen, I got this house, I want to sell it. Can I subdivide my lot? Are they ever going to be able to do that, for instance?
It won't change the regulations regarding subdivision. So if the lot can be subdivided now, then they can subdivide it. But if they can't, then this does not change the ability to subdivide.
Oh, okay. So how will we know if it's subdivided, if it is an ability to be subdivided?
It's a function of the lot size and the zoning district they're on, and what the minimum lot size and the development standards are. So it really depends on every lot you'd have to just lot by lot basis, depending on what their zoning is and what their development standards are, whether or not they can subdivide.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else who wishes to ask a question about this text amendment? All right. We move on to the next text change. The next text change has to do with the wastewater connection within the urban service area. The purpose of this text amendment is to require connection to a publicly owned and operated wastewater facility when a subdivision of a parent parcel or lot of record occurs in the urban service area. This will only allow subdivision of a parent parcel or lot of record in the urban service area if the newly created lots connect to a publicly owned and operated wastewater facility. The other exceptions will be maintained to public potable water connections, which is permitted today by the Land Development Code. Anyone wishes to ask a question or comment on this?
I would like to ask questions. This is going to basically deny anyone who is in the urban service area from getting a well. Is that the gist of it?
No, this will only deal with wastewater connection,
Oh,
not
wastewater. Okay.
correct. Yes.
All right. Now, the other question is then who is going to pay for this connection?
Anybody who wishes to subdivide a parent parcel or lot of record in the urban service area will have to absorb the cost of connecting to the wastewater facility. Basically, the property owner or the applicant who is submitting for the subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. The next text amendment is related to the public testimony by a party of record. The purpose of this text amendment is to allow public testimony by a party of record at the Board of County Commissioners land use meetings for rezoning applications, and this will not require the party of record to file a request for oral argument as it is required today. It will be permissible, again, for a party of record to provide public testimony without first having to wait for the zoning hearing master decision and then file to request for oral argument with the clerk's office. Is someone here who wishes to speak or has a question about this text change? Ms. Bosworth, you are muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'd just like to speak strongly in support of this, and I'll do the same with the BOCC, but it's such a convoluted system right now, and I just want to say thanks for making this change and proposing it.
Thank you for your comment. I'm gonna do a brief parenthesis here. I see that Mr. Mechanic is still in the attendee list. And I just want him to have the opportunity to let us know if he has a question. Okay, anybody else on this?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. If someone chooses not to speak at the zoning master, can they still become a party of record, and how will they do this under the new amendment?
So as long as you are a party of record, if you didn't speak at the ZHM, but you are a party of record, and that can be verified by our county attorney's office, you will not have to file for oral argument.
Okay, my question is that many people cannot make it to the zoning master hearing. They still want to speak before the BOCC. How is this LDC addressing that issue?
Well, again, the change is that you don't have to file for the oral argument. You will have the opportunity to attend the BOCC land use for a particular case that either you or a neighbor or a party of record, again, couldn't attend, and they will be able to speak at the Board of County Commissioners land use meeting. Right, the way the text is, again, is being written, and again, these are subject to updates and changes, is that you don't have to file for any documentation through the clerk's office. That's how it is written today.
Yeah, this is Brian Grady again. Yeah, the standards for who becomes a party of record is not changing. The standard is you receive mailed notice, or you submit document evidence into the file 2 business days prior to the hearing, or you attend the hearing. So if somebody who can't attend the hearing submits a letter into the record saying they're opposed to it, they support it, that kind of documentary evidence, they become a party of record, and therefore they have the right to speak to what they submitted into the record. So that won't be changing. And this just basically for those folks who qualify for party record, if adopted, they would no longer have to file that additional paperwork. That's required now.
Okay, does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't. I want to clarify this. All right. If a person just emails the zoning master and says, I do not agree with this and I want to be a party of record, that allows them the allows them the right of going before the BOCC without filing anything else.
Yes, they qualify as a party of record by submitting an email to the file saying we're opposed to this, and then they would not have to file the oral argument to speak to the board.
Okay, I think that needs to be clarified in this LDC amendment.
About regarding the party of records not having to file oral argument?
No, that that they can become a party of record, and explaining the party of record by submitting an email to the zoning master that you oppose that and you want to become a party of record.
Well, I think that's in the code, so we can certainly, I understand the comment. We can certainly look at that as part of, as we move forward with presentation to the board about making, because that's in the code now, so we can certainly look at that to make sure it's clear, but I understand the comment.
There's too many citizens out here that do not understand the convolutions of the zoning. And it needs to be made as simple as possible so they can have a right to speak.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, I got a question too about this. If I'm not mistaken, the issue is, will you accept emails to become a party of record? And everything that's been said here, has been about you have to submit a letter. And
emails are sufficient, and they've been accepted. That's what most people do nowadays because of the technology. Most people send emails.
Okay. And are these emails sent via the county website, or can they be sent by a normal Joe Blow to the county, and it gets to the right person?
There's various ways you can email it to the county. There's a hearings web email address. You can email it to the case planner. So we've had ones where they've even been emailed to the county commissioners and they forwarded it to us. And so there's different ways to get it to us, and we make sure it gets put into the record so that it's in there and those people, their issues and concerns can be heard.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is I'm pretty tech savvy, and I have a difficulty finding the emails to where you send these to. So if they could somehow make a specialized area for that, it would be more than helpful.
Okay. Yeah, we can. I know we have that, and certainly if we've got your contact, I think we probably have your contact information. We can certainly make sure that our hearing operations staff can reach out to you and give you that information so you have it for future reference.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else has a question or comment? All right. Okay. We will go to the next. The next amendment is related to establishing time limit to approve plan development districts and general site plans. The purpose is to establish a time limit to approve plan development districts and general site plans after approval by the Board of County Commissioners. There will be a maximum 5-year period to receive that the site plan and the projects to receive construction plans or plat approval before they become expired. This expiration will be related to the internal transportation network and external access points, and also any conditions related to those issues or items. Upon expiration of the certified PD general site plan, recertification of the PD general site plan will be required through a minor modification to the plan development in accordance with changes to plan developments. Anybody who wishes to speak on this item? I know that David wanted to speak about this one. David, can you hear us? I'm trying to, okay. You are unmuted. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Israel. This amendment can, I think, have the effect of placing a large burden on multi-phase developments. Most people, when they file a PD zoning with a long build out, want to be able to know that the regulations that are applicable to their project will be the same throughout the development of a project. And so if they have that uncertainty about what regulations will apply, it has a potential economic consequence to the developer, and it also may discourage long-term development plans. In fact, you might actually be encouraging developers to file piecemeal plans because there's no advantage to putting all of your property into one unified plan development. Because, you know, again, we're talking about a large scale, usually a residential subdivision. You would wind up not being able to build all of the development in 5 years. And so you would be forced to come back and review, have a recertification of your plan every 5 years. I mean, this not only would be a substantial burden to the developers, I think it would create a much larger workload for the staff. And I'd like to give an example of a project in the city. And the city of Tampa has a similar code provision, but the difference between the city's provision and what the county is now proposing is if the development is substantially commenced, that is, substantial construction activity has occurred within 5 years, then the rest of the development is not subject to changes in the regulations. And I would just say, as an example, in the city of Tampa, I represented International Plaza, and that was originally built in 2001, and there have been literally 8 significant phase of construction that has occurred over a 20-year period. So in that particular example, they would have gotten the original mall under the original PD approval, but then the other 7 major additions to the mall would have been subject to review, possibly 7 different reviews to determine to update the regulations for that project. It creates a great deal of uncertainty. I think lenders would be extremely cautious about it. And just to wrap up, I think that, as I mentioned before, but I think it's a significant consideration, if you create a disincentive for a developer to show you his entire plan of development, he will be encouraged to file smaller PD zoning plans because there's no upside to filing a plan that shows your whole property when your entitlements are going to expire in 5 years. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Now, just to clarify, this is not that the entitlements will expire. It's related to the internal transportation and or external access points.
Right, but if you are, you will be under the language, you would be exposed to whatever code changes occurred since the last time your PD was approved. So those changes can be significant, and it could affect the economics and the feasibility of a project to move forward.
All right, understood. Thanks for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Israel, may I speak as well?
Sure.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Well, kind of like Gordon, I have a kind of a similar comment to Mr. Mechanic's. just looking at the 5-year initially, the 5-year period, it just seems to me that that number is arbitrary. And so, you know, there is some legal concern by just using an arbitrary number. But having said that, the question I see on the first bullet is just simply, it shouldn't be a maximum 5 years. It should be 5 years with the ability to, you know, in certain circumstances, there's going to be a justification for more. And I don't think you know, a phased project is certainly one example. Another example would be if there were a development agreement associated with the project, perhaps a 10-year development agreement. You would probably, you want consistency, and development agreements can be very helpful in having infrastructure built. So I would suggest that you consider, if you're going to put a 5-year number on it, you should give the ability of the board to establish at the time of zoning a longer period if it's justified and demonstrated. So I would ask that you consider that. The second thing certainly now is possibly where you should also be considering making sure you've built in tolling. Sometimes, you know, a hurricane is probably a better example than the current health situation, but you can have the need to toll a project because you can't do anything due to something beyond the property owner's control. So I would suggest you make sure that tolling of time periods is covered in this limitation if you are going to in fact be recommending a 5-year period. That would be, tolling would be like a local or regional or state or even federal emergency order or something of that nature you would tie the tolling to. And that's not a new concept, as all the planners on the call know, but it's something that seems to have been overlooked. And then finally, just on the existing PD section, it seems to me again that if you're going to be taking someone whose rights have been established and actually be trying to modify them in the future, it seems to me that it ought to be due to a substantial change to an existing PD. That would mirror the old version of development of regional impact law and so forth. But my point is that I think the language is overbroad and could lead to either an absurd result in some cases or just unintended results. You know, someone could be wanting to do something that the whole community embraces and wants, but it would be triggering this process, and it would be a disincentive to be modifying a PD, an approved PD zoning. So I would suggest you look at the language about when an existing already approved PD would be affected. And I would suggest you use something of the nature of a substantial change. Under your code, you know, a major modification or something of that nature would seem to me to be a more appropriate step that would cause the review. But again, those are my 3 general comments. But I did want to make sure you were considering them, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Gordon and David. And to the point of the time extension, we do have actually there is a proposed provision that would allow for a developer or an applicant to ask for an extension.
Just a second,
which
please.
is 1 year. And so that's going to be clarified in the PowerPoint, but there is a proposed, again, provision to extend for an additional year based on our justifications from a developer. But these are all good comments and recommendations.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask some questions, please.
Yes.
Yes. Well, just as a general observation, these PDs come out and they're approved, and 15 to 20 years later, all of a sudden, the neighborhood gets this big development that we had no idea that was being built, and is absolutely incompatible with the area. And this is why we need to have a maximum amount of time to allow the PD, if the developer wants to come in and develop this property within this time frame and meets the criteria, fine. If they wait, and then all of a sudden the area develops, and that's what we're having, that's what a big problem we're having out here where I live, is that in the 80s, everything was rezoned for the benefit of the BOCC that went out in handcuffs. And now we're stuck with this. And all of a sudden, we're getting developments that are incompatible with the way the area has been developed. So yes, there needs to be a sunset amount of time. If you want to have an extension on this, then the public needs to be notified that there is going to be an extension and what the PD is. And what's the problem with allowing the public to know what your plans are that are going to impact our property rights in the future?
Yes, I have a statement too, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm reading this very carefully, and if I'm not mistaken, it says that the maximum 5-year period will reestablish to receive construction plans or plat approval. I love that. I think that's great. But the big issue is, it says once a 5-year period is passed, the approved certified PD plan would expire for the internal transportation network and external access points, as well as for any conditions related to the internal transportation network and external access points for the PD or those portions of the PD. Is it my understanding by that wording that this only has to deal with the internal transportation and external transportation networks?
Yes, this text amendment will only deal with those conditions and information on site plans related to those issues, transportation network and access points.
So this has nothing to do with what's being built on it or how high or things like that. This has only to deal with the transportation network. Correct. Is that correct? Okay. And I don't see why developers would be upset about that. I mean, that just makes good common logic. I agree with that we should have a 5-year period, and I think you should go ahead with that without any giveaways to the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. Anybody else who wishes to comment? All right, we will move on to the next text change. Land Development Code Text 200723 deals with additional information related to transportation in general site plans for plan development. This text amendment would require additional information related to transportation in plan development site plans. This information will be required again for all PD site plans at the time of the application for plan developments, major modifications, and minor modifications to plan development districts. Identification of cross-access, connectivity opportunities to surrounding sites and parcels for proposed plan development zoning districts in the context of the overall roadway network in the area will have to be indicated. Again, alternative design consideration to these requirements will be required again to submit a variation request in accordance with the Land Development Code sections 5030666. So basically what that is saying is that if there is an alternative consideration or design for the requirements for any cross-access or connectivity, the applicant will have to file a plan development variation request in accordance to what the code has currently in section 50306C. Any questions related to this text amendment? All right, seeing none. Moving on to the next one. Land Development Code 200724. This text amendment is related again to transportation. This will expand the number of roadways from class 5 to 6 on which vehicular and or pedestrian cross-access may be required. The expansion of the application of cross-access requirement to class 6 roadways such that cross-access is required for projects on all collectors and arterial roadways when specified conditions are met. And we have transportation staff here in the meeting if there is anyone who wishes to ask a question or place a comment. Seeing none, move on to the next one. This is another transportation-related text amendment. This text change will allow additional alternative, specifically for emergency access connections within all planned development districts without requiring a rezoning modification to the district. Addition of alternative emergency access ways for planned development zone projects within the site development process without requiring an amendment to the PD, and provide the same design standards for emergency access ways found today within the subdivision portion of the Land Development Code. Again, transportation staff is present in the meeting today if there is anybody who wants to ask a question or comment. Okay, seeing none, we go to the next one and the last. Land Development Code 200856. The purpose of this text amendment is to add a provision to toll the calculation of the 6 months time frame limit for an application to be heard at a public hearing in the event the public hearing is canceled by the county during the 6 month period. This text change would allow to pause the calculation of the 6 month period when a public hearing is canceled due to county closures during emergency events. Once the public hearing is scheduled again, the calculation of time for the 6 months deadline for an application would then resume at the next public hearing. What the code allows today is that once a application that goes to a public hearing is filed and there is a hearing date set, that 6 month maximum period for that case to be within the rezoning process start running, and then it will expire 6 months after that first hearing. With this text amendment, again, if a hearing within those 6 month period is canceled, then the calculation is tolled and then resumed once a new public hearing is set for that particular case. Anybody who has a question or comment? And again, this text amendment, it's a necessity that we are facing today with the situation that we have with the COVID-19. So this would account for emergency, also any weather-related emergency that will have or make the county cancel the hearings. Any questions? All right. Any comment, final comment from staff? And if not, I think we reached the end of the meeting. And we are available if you have final questions or comments before we close.
I have a final question. Can you tell me the time of the first public hearing with the BOCC?
Yes, the first public hearing will be. Let me get that slide. The first public hearing will be on Thursday, July 23rd.
Correct. At what time?
At 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? And just to add to that last question, the second public hearing will be on September 24th, and that's the hearing where the county Board of County Commissioners will vote to adopt the text amendments. Okay.
Yes, I have a question. Just a minute,
yes.
please. My wife was trying to get through to you, but evidently she got muted by the organizer. So I'm going to let her talk on mine. Okay. If you could just wait a second, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
It's all yours.
Yes, apparently the organizer muted me and I could not get on.
Sorry about that.
I wanted to ask a question regarding the emergency area. I was under the impression that plan developments are required to have at least 2 access points for for EMTs. Apparently they
Okay, I will have transportation staff.
I'm here. So the question is, because the change here is to not having to go through a change in the land development code when an emergency access is needed. I would like you to explain your question a little better.
What I'm saying is that I was under the impression that every planned development had to have at least 2 accesses to the planned development for emergency vehicles already, before they even get an extra rezoning permit.
Before they get to the rezoning, I will have to.
When you
I will
apply
have to.
for zoning for PD, you had to show on your plan two access points for emergency vehicles before you even go any further.
This is Brian Reddy. There's standards in there for like residential subdivisions that deal with, depending on number of trips and number of units, requirements for a second access point for the project. What this is addressing is that, also for like we've experienced with a commercial project where after it goes through zoning review, the fire marshal determines based on the design that particular project needs to have an access point for emergency vehicles. And so it's dealing with other issues where, for whatever reason, post zoning approval, and the fire marshal determines that for safety reasons, a particular project needs to have an emergency access point. And so that's what it's trying to address. So you're correct that on a number of instances, especially for single family subdivisions, when they're in the review process for PDs, there's provisions in the code will dictate how many access points they have. But again, this is dealing with instances where this is not those type of instances that occur.
Well, then why isn't that the example you gave where the fire marshal comes back in afterwards, why wasn't that addressed at the initial zoning? That should have been taken care of in the initial zoning.
I don't disagree with that statement, but I can't speak for the reason why the fire marshal may have raised it at during the zoning. But again, it was for emergency vehicles, it's not going to function as a full access point. The example you're using about when a subdivision has to have 2 access points, those typically will function as 2 full access points. This is talking about an emergency access point that's only designed for emergency vehicle that has like a lockbox and a gate on it. It's not really fully paved. And so again, it just provides, if for some reason, the emergency vehicle can't get on site through the normal access, it provides them another means of access to the project. So that's what this is dealing with. So it wouldn't be functioning as a full access point. It wouldn't be designed as such.
I understand what you're saying, but once they start doing that, does it impact on the plan that's been, if they happen to accommodate an extra access point for emergency vehicles after the fact?
Mm-hmm.
if that impacts on the plan itself, the way that plan, the buildings and stuff are oriented, they don't have to go back for another zoning. And that's another thing that I see that happens quite frequently, that they do something like this, it modifies the original site plan, and then nothing happens.
I understand the concern. I mean, we can certainly look at that. I mean, from our perspective, this, you know, from experience, we were not thinking that, you know, these type of emergency access would have a significant change on the design of the project, because it was
Well, I've seen that happen.
again providing.
I've seen that
So
happen.
yeah, we can certainly look into that, you know, as part of reviewing, you know, how this, with this regulation going forward. But again, that was we didn't see that this was going to have a significant change on the overall design of it, because again, since it's really just almost a temporary not really a temporary access, but it really is an access that's only serving in emergencies, that is not going to be being used on any basis.
And again, I think that
other
should have
than
been
for.
And again, I think that should be addressed during this zoning process to begin with.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, anybody else to wrap up? Again, thank you for your participation. We have taken all your comments, and we will move
yes,
on to the. Yes.
Will these comments be summarized and posted on your website?
This meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted in our YouTube channel. Okay. And we are taking all these comments also for staff to take those all the comments and have it for consideration, and then we will move on to the next public hearing in front of the Board of County Commissioners. And we also encourage you to participate on that day as well.
All right, so if I want to see the summary of this, I can go to the agenda thing that is on the website.
I'm not sure we will have this particular set of comments or summary in the website, but I can definitely do a follow-up with you and let you know the summary of the comments, and also direct you to the YouTube channel with the with all these meeting.
The HGTV channel, you're saying?
Correct.
It's not so much for me, it's other people need to know this too.
Sure. Sure. Okay, again, thank you for your participation. They're all good comments and questions. And feel free to contact me if you have additional questions. Also use our public hearing contact information in the website, in our land development code section and page. Thank you. And with this, we close and finish our meeting today. Have a good evening.